Thank you. That's good to be back. Our campus has changed quite a bit since we were here. I feel a little cheated. These halls are a little nicer than what I had in the Brown building when I was in the engineering program. But it's good that the school is growing. I guess enrollment's nearly doubled since my time here at Mines. So Maureen had asked that we provide. It's too loud? Be loud. Okay, be loud, not too loud. Very good. So Maureen had asked that we share some of our career perspectives, but also being that Kathryn has renewables expertise, we'll open the floor for Q&A after we go through our career experience, and you could also ask me questions on my career path, but I would open the floor to Kathryn since there is a focus on renewable energy space here. During this presentation, we'll be using the Leadership Passages framework. This is something that we learned in business school. We think it's very helpful for you. Many times when I'm interviewing new grads, they make the proclamation that they'd like to join the management ranks at some point. And oftentimes, I ask, well, what does that mean to you? How do you intend to get there? And so I think this will help frame that for you and help you better understand if that's really something that you'd like to pursue long term, or if you'd rather go down the technical expertise track. So with that, I'll start off on the first slide. I think it's good to ground you with a different business climate when we got out of school. So in 2000, the economy was booming. I had multiple job offers. I was able to utilize a career center and get offers in the software space and in the traditional energy track, where I had offers from Chevron, Texaco, Equilon Pipeline, and also Shell. But I actually opted to go on a non-traditional track, and I found an opportunity for myself with an internet startup. So I did go and work for this internet startup. It turned out to be not such a good choice for a career option early on because the internet bubble had burst in March of 2000, just prior to me graduating. And by December of 2000, I was out of a job. So at that point, I was able to transition into a role as a consultant. But the point I'm trying to make here is I had multiple opportunities. I made a decision that ultimately didn't work out, but I was able to recover.
So when I graduated, just 2 years later, things were a little bit different. The career fair when I was a senior was actually held on September 11th, 2001. So from that day forward, the job prospects and the traditional recruiting on campus changed dramatically. So recognizing I was going to be on my own in May, I started to try to be a little bit creative in my job hunt. And so I was very pleased that I was still able to secure 2 job offers, and one was in the utility space, and that was leveraging family connections, and the other was also in consulting, and that was leveraging the Mines alumni network. So took a little bit of extra legwork, but I was very happy to have a job when I graduated.
Okay. Before we get into the leadership passages, and this is a framework that's presented in the book, The Leadership Pipeline. We actually, at the end of the presentation here, if you're interested in pursuing, reading that further, we'll show you the source there and the authors. But prior to entering your leadership passages, you're going to work as an individual contributor. So your first role out of school is going to be as an individual contributor, and the skill requirements there are going to be planning and punctuality, content, quality and reliability of work. And you need to start accepting some values as an individual contributor. Those include accepting the culture of your organization and adopting professional standards. And we really feel that your Mines career is going to set you up to be very successful as an individual contributor. You have this rigorous coursework. You have to deliver quality work to get the marks that you need to move on. So that part of it, I think, is going to be a fairly simple transition for you as a Mines grad. But moving on to the values portion, you're really going to have to work hard to accept that culture of the company. And when you choose to work somewhere, you need to understand going in what that culture is and make sure that it works with your perspective. In terms of strategy at this level, you need to collaborate with others, which is another thing that Mines is really setting you up to do well. And more than anything, it's an exponential industry knowledge gain. So my personal experience as a consultant, I worked in that function for 4 years. Started out as a junior analyst, supporting senior consultants, looking at supply and demand funnels in North American natural gas markets. It was a tremendous opportunity. I worked for 2 different organizations during that 4-year period. was able to work on location in Tokyo and the Middle East on consulting engagements. So it really helped me with that exponential industry knowledge gain. But one of the things that I noticed while I was working as a consultant is that I did want to gain more technical expertise. I had a real good understanding and a breadth of knowledge of the energy industry from working as a consultant. But some of my clients, they were using the work that I was producing to go and make specific hedging recommendations and trading recommendations for their organizations. And that was something that I was very interested in. So again, through the Minds Alumni Network, I was able to land a position with Encana as a fundamentals analyst. And I worked in this role as an individual contributor for my first 2 years at Encana. And because I was able to be successful in these skill requirements, planning and punctuality, meeting deadlines, and also delivering a very good work product, I was identified as a high potential employee and given the opportunity to enter into a rotational assignment at Encana in the upstream business unit. This was intended to be a 24-month exercise, but 9 months into the program, they actually brought me back into the marketing organization to do a study on how shale gas development in North America was going to impact the overall market. So that was a great experience. I was able to work on my project management skills, learn how to work collaboratively with technical professionals across the organizations, geologists, geophysicists, reservoir engineers, production engineers. But more importantly, I was able to learn how to influence laterally. Leading this project, I had no position of power, but we had this work product that we needed to deliver. And that's something that early in your career, you definitely need to focus on that, how to work with people and get them to help perform and do work for you when you're not their boss. So ultimately, I was very successful on that project and was promoted to first-line manager.
So similarly, I started out in the individual contributor level in the consulting space, and which is where we met, the subgroup within the consultancy that I was supporting focused on the coal markets. And so there we were doing some asset valuation and due diligence for companies and price fundamentals for the coal sector. And so my knowledge of the energy sector really grew, my ability to do the type of specific analysis and quantitative work there increased exponentially. So that was tremendously valuable. But I wasn't certain that I wanted to stay so focused on the coal space. So I looked to branch out but stay sort of in the individual contributor level and moved laterally over to Xcel Energy, where I worked in their risk management organization supporting their trading floor. So there it was really valuation of options and trading strategies for their power marketers. And that was fun work, but I realized that you're kind of a support role there, and I was going to stay in that role there, and there wasn't going to be a lot of opportunity to move into the actual trading. So I moved, again, laterally back over to the coal side of the business, but within Xcel Energy, where I was the primary analyst in their coal supply group. And I really enjoyed working on the industry side there, so that the project valuation, the contract analysis, following the market prices, had a lot more perspective for me since I was supporting the company's operations. But I really couldn't have done that, and I wouldn't have earned the position if I hadn't had that consulting experience that gave me the foundation to do that kind of work. And I worked for several years within the coal supply group.
Okay. So again, just setting yourself up to get an opportunity. But one of the things I want to point out as we move into Passage 1, so you've positioned yourself to be considered for first-line management at this point. But it's really important to consider that at this stage in your career, do you want to go down the path of being a manager? Do you value what requires to be successful as a manager, or do you want to continue on as a technical expert? That's perfectly acceptable, particularly in my organization. It's highly valued. The technical experts, they don't have any functional management responsibility, but they're highly valued at the company. They have a very rewarding career, and they're compensated very well. So if you want to continue on your science track, that's perfectly acceptable, but I would encourage you, if you were given this opportunity, to accept the challenge and at least consider if you do want to move into the management track. The biggest pitfall when you move into Passage 1 is a reluctance to change. You have put yourself in this position because you're such a high performer at the individual contributor level. and you have the desire to keep going down that path because you've gotten all this recognition. But at this point, you need to learn how to get work done through others. So planning work, filling jobs, assigning work, measuring performance. And the values, again, that you have to obtain at this point is getting work done through others. You must learn to value managerial work, not just tolerate it, and value making others productive. This is how you're going to be measured now, how well your team does work. My experience here, I definitely did struggle early on because I was such a high performer as an individual contributor, and I wanted to continue doing that work. I was a subject matter expert in Western U.S. regional gas markets. I was the one making the hedging recommendations to protect our revenue for our production growth in the Rockies. I was supporting the build-out of infrastructure. One of the big projects I worked on at that time was the Rockies Express pipeline, which was connecting the Rockies market to the Northeast markets. Kinder Morgan ultimately built that project. But it was very difficult to let that go because you're just very proud of those individual contributions that you're making, and we were rewarded for it. But ultimately, Kathryn and I both, as she mentioned, attended business school, and I was able to step back and look and notice that I was failing my team at that time. I wasn't helping them get to the next level or be positioned for a new opportunity. So I was able to step back, and it was actually through studying these leadership passages that I was able to regroup and understand what was more important for me to be doing at that time. So ultimately, that was a successful transition for me, and I've learned to value being a professional manager equally as I value being an individual contributor.
So it was within the coal supply department that I was able to successfully move through this first passage to management as well. So as the analyst in the group, when I was doing the supply chain work and the market analysis, my boss became a real champion for me. He was very happy with my work, and frankly, it was because I was just working my tail off there. And so he recognized my efforts, and he rewarded me with the management position when it opened up in the department. And it was kind of a big deal at Excel because being a sort of a traditional utility, I definitely didn't have the tenure at the company or just generally on my resume that most of the management level folks at the company do. So I was very excited to receive that opportunity, and I was also quite nervous because the team that I was managing, similar to Chris's experience, had been a team of my peers, and so now I was their boss, and they were all old enough to be my parents. So that was another dynamic that I was going to have to overcome. And for me, I found that all to be okay in the end, and we were really able to work well together. What was the biggest challenge for me at this phase was really sitting across the table from my counterparts. Again, I was in the coal procurement business. I was buying 20 million tons of coal, spending $300 million a year for the company, and I'm working with these coal supply companies, these mine managers. They were very clearly very uncomfortable sitting across the table from someone that was so much younger than they were and somebody that was a woman. And for many of them in their long careers in that industry had never dealt with that before. So I'd say my most satisfying outcome from that phase of my career to date was that I didn't overcome all of those relationship challenges. And I think several of my counterparts were really happy when I moved on from the coal supply group. But a few of those counterparts have now become really close industry colleagues of mine, even though they're all, pushing retirement age now. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So moving on to passage 2. This is where things get a bit more challenging. Again, Kathryn had shared when I was promoted to first line manager, I was managing a group of individuals who were previously my peers. So that has unique challenges in and of itself, particularly because we're also competitive with each other. Now you're in a position of authority with them, and they have to trust that you're not going to have that competitive nature with them anymore, and you're going to do the things that are required to develop their talent going forward. And so really your skill requirements at this point are selecting people for passage 1. You're going to be assigning managerial and leadership work, measuring progress of individuals and managers, and identifying value-based resistance to managerial responsibilities. And this one's actually really difficult because, okay, you pick the person that was the high-performing individual contributor, and again, there has to be an honest assessment of where you want to go with your career. Do you want to continue on this management track now that you've gotten the opportunity, or do you want to step back and go and become an individual subject matter expert and continue on that individual contributor track? I've had a few experiences in the past couple of years where we had to have that managerial moment of truth and talk to a person and provide coaching that, you're falling short on these things that you need to do as a first-line manager. I'm willing to provide coaching and mentoring for you, but we need to be honest. Is this something that you're going to value going forward? In one instance, that was absolutely the case. We were able to develop a performance plan, and that person is now my top manager. And they're very successful in coaching and motivating their team and letting things go, delegating tasks. That's a big thing to make that transition. But another person, they decided, and this isn't a unilateral decision. This is something that as a Passage 2 leader that you can make unilaterally. You have to work collaboratively with this individual and make sure that this is the right choice for them. But ultimately, they did choose to go back into that subject matter expert track, and they are just, the value that they're providing to the company is much greater at that point than what they were doing as a manager. So it was a great solution for all involved. At this point, you value leadership development. You're developing and coaching future leaders, and your pitfall here is if you continue to value individual contributions over managerial contributions. So again, those high performers are going to be doing the work and making the overall group successful and making sure that the corporate objectives are being met. But those people might not be the best leaders going forward. The best trader on the trade floor may not be the best manager, or the best reservoir engineer may not be the best manager. You need to be able to identify that and work with them.
So at this point in my career progression, I chose to go a slightly different route. Instead of continuing to move up into the supply chain ranks and supporting the energy production side at Xcel Energy, I was offered an opportunity as a developmental role to move over to environmental policy, and that was in 2008. So for me, this was really a promotion in visibility, and it was clear the company was valuing my fundamental understanding of kind of the operations side of our business. But it was going to be an exciting challenge for me to understand the policy and regulatory influences on our company and try to help form the strategy that was going to make us successful in what we thought was going to be a really different landscape. Because in 2008 was when Congress was contemplating the Waxman-Markey bill, which would have enacted a carbon cap and trade program in this country, and that would have dramatically changed the way power companies do business. So I was no longer going to be managing a team directly, but I was really going to be laterally influencing managers in the company to start to think about how they were going to have to do their jobs differently, because the whole mode of business that we were operating under was going to have to change. And so it's been a really fascinating time to learn about that side of the business, and now 3 years into it, that again has changed, and I think we know that there is not going to be cap and trade legislation facing any of our businesses anytime soon, and it's really a focus on how we're going to compete and succeed in a downtime economically and with increased regulatory burdens.
Although there are 6 leadership passages in total, I'm going to leave you here with passage 3 because that's really what's most pertinent to our career development thus far. So passage 3 is managing managers to being a functional manager. And in Canada being a very flat organization, I'm actually kind of on the boundary of passage 2 and passage 3. So skill requirements here are team play with functional managers across your organization, delegation of functional duties to your direct reports, competition for resource based on business need and corporate strategy, and you have to be a proficient strategist at this point in your career. So you need to learn how to blend your overall function to have an impact on your business strategy and your corporate objectives. You need to be able at this point in your career to adopt a broad long-term perspective and market outlook and create functional strategy that allows a sustainable edge over your competition. So really what this is, in my current role, is a synthesis of the information that all of these analysts are reporting up through me so that we can make a call. All right, prices are going to be soft in this period. We need to go and execute a hedge program so that we can protect the capital budgets of the upstream business units and continue to pay the dividend to our shareholders. So it's really, that's a primary function. And now that Encana is kind of reshaping its focus from purely a natural gas company to potentially a crude oil company and a liquids company, we're now having to learn new markets and understand how that's going to fit in with our corporate strategy going forward as well. So the value that you have to obtain to be successful in this passage is valuing work outside of your functional expertise. So I really have to understand what the business needs of the business unit managers are on the upstream side so that they can protect their capital budgets. And also, the pitfall here is the inability to see the big picture in the market and your inability to think strategically. So be focused on that as you're progressing through your career. So next, we want to move into more talking about the outlook for our respective industries. We're working in very interesting times now, and there's been transformational technology in the traditional energy sector. You know, the use or the improvement in horizontal drilling techniques and multi-stage fracturing has just transformed the natural gas business. Along with that, we now have abundant supply in North America, so we're going to be able to capture market share from competing fuels such as coal. So there's likely to be a massive retirement of coal-fired generation and a large build-out of gas-fired generation. In addition to that, natural gas may also be used as an alternative fuel for transportation. One of the things that Encana is promoting is the use of compressed natural gas in the consumer fleet, but also liquefied natural gas and moving large freight across the country and in shipping applications. A byproduct in natural gas production is natural gas liquids. So there's been a reemergence in the petrochemical sector in North America. I just came back from Houston. I was visiting the Mont Belvieu liquids hub and just seeing all the new construction that's going on there, because now we are again competitive with the Europeans and the Asians in producing olefins, so your basic building blocks for plastics. Along with that, there's going to be new infrastructure build out. Dow Chemical is now announcing that they want to build a new world-scale plant on the Gulf Coast to take advantage of these feedstocks that are available at a very competitive price. Another thing that's happening because of this transformational technology is the oil production in the lower 48 is now in a growth mode. So we're able to take the technology that we use to extract natural gas from shale and source rock and apply that to oil production. I'm sure you've heard of the Bakken trend up in Montana, North Dakota. There are other plays like the Eagle Ford down in South Texas where they're applying this. And so we've gone from a situation of declining oil production in the lower 48 through to growth in 2010. And we think by the end of 2011, we'll be approaching 8 million barrels a day of production. Potentially by 2020 and beyond, getting that above 9 million barrels a day of production again. So just a renaissance in the energy business. And what's also driving this is just global energy demand growth. When you look at global natural gas consumption, we expect that it's going to increase by 50% between now and 2030. Now, I grabbed the statistic from the BP Statistical Energy Review, but Encana shares this perspective. So to ground that consumption in North America, so Canada and the lower 48, it's about 75 billion cubic feet per day. So this market is going to double that by 2030. So 2 times the size of the North American gas market. So there's going to be tremendous opportunities, not only on the demand side of natural gas, but also on the production side. Similarly, oil consumption is expected to increase by 20% by 2030. So this isn't going away. It's going to be a portfolio approach. The global thirst for energy is not going to be quenched. So it's going to be a portfolio approach with nat gas, coal, oil, but also the renewable space. Kathryn, take it from there.
So, like Chris said, we're working in very interesting times, and a few years ago, my department, we used to talk about where is the great technology breakthrough going to come in energy, and primarily on the power side of the energy industry. And we wondered if it was really going to be the cost reductions in solar technology, or perhaps an energy storage breakthrough, or something in energy efficiency that was really going to change that side of the business dramatically. And I think that we agree that the transformational change in the energy space has occurred, but it actually occurred, as Chris just described, in the natural gas production business. And so it has really affected the renewable strategy of many companies because it's changed the whole cost curve for the business. I think as Americans and as people that pay utility bills, it's good for all of us for sure that natural gas is less expensive, but it's also changed that competitive landscape where renewable energy has always been the most expensive option, and now the bar, that it's competing against has been lowered. So it's just, you know, with a challenge comes an opportunity, but it's definitely impacting our strategy and I think the entire nation's strategy. But you'll see that while it's changing, you know, the desire for this type of technology and energy has not gone away. I don't think we're going to see the federal, the national level leadership and direction coming from policy there. But with 39 states in this country having renewable portfolio requirements, you know, it's clear that citizens want it, and so they're driving it, you know, much more locally, which I think is, you know, interesting and perhaps allows for a little bit more flexibility in the strategy. So, you know, there's still tremendous opportunity. You just have to find it in different ways and really think about, you know, if you want to work in that space, what's a way for you to position yourself as an expert to get in there? You know, it's funny, my father started his career in the utility industry. So when I told him that I was taking a job at Xcel Energy, he was so horribly disappointed because he thought it was just going to be the most boring thing that I could possibly do. And so my first day he called and asked if I was sitting at my desk with my feet up smoking a cigarette, because that was his first day at the utility company. And so, you know, it's been fun and interesting to tell him that it's really not like that, that, you know, it's our focus, like Chris alluded to, is on this diverse portfolio, trying new technologies, bringing new products literally to our customers, and so that we're more than just the company that you know send your check to. You actually have some decisions to make in your power supply. And so I think that you'll see opportunities continuing to evolve at utility companies across the country. I mean, we have, you know, people that have renewable energy in their titles now at the company, whole departments. And 10 years ago, those departments as a whole didn't exist. I think that it's important to understand, if you're going to go narrowly into any specific energy option, that you understand what it's competing against. You know, Chris has, as a consultant, developed a vast understanding of the coal side of the business, so that he knows, you know, what natural gas is competing against. And similarly with renewables, you really need to understand that traditional generation, because it's always going to be what it's compared against. And the supply chain side of it, you know, if you aren't finding a lot of opportunity, because I expect there to be some consolidation in the renewable energy company arena. You know, there's always, you just go back a layer. In the supply chain, you know, who is providing the components that they're putting into those wind turbines? Who is providing the materials that they're putting into those PV panels? And so there's, you know, just keep it really broad, and I think you'll find the opportunities kind of trickle out that way. So that's kind of coming to my last thought here about finding your niche. And renewable energy has been a fascinating field for me to work in, and I took a lot of flack when I made the move from my old coal counterparts, because they know they're on the dark side of the business. But really, I think it's, you know, important to keep the portfolio approach. So we just have one last slide. I know you guys are covered up in PowerPoint slides in other classes, so we kind of hated to even take this approach. But we'll just end it now with, as we were just discussing, things to consider in your job hunt. And we hear that the employment statistics are still very strong out of mind, and we're really proud to hear that as alumni. But, you know, if you aren't looking for the traditional jobs that they're posting at the career fair, and you know, want to get into a unique space, use your network and you'll find your opportunity there. And take a risk, because with this pedigree that you gained here, you know, if it doesn't work out, you'll be able to stumble into the next opportunity. And as Chris described, management is not the only destination, and I think that that's something that is really worth thinking about. And especially in these new and evolving fields, there's definitely a need for some real technical experts. So I think that choosing to do that in solar technology or another option, you know, will carry you a really long way. And you know, like Chris said, we're not going to satisfy this thirst for energy, so that's good. If it's the career path we're going to take, we'll have a job. So, and I can write this on the board, but if anybody wants to email us a question or bounce an idea or something off of us later, we'd be happy to talk with you or follow up. So I'll put that on the board.
And last, if you want to follow up on the leadership passages, I definitely recommend that reading. If you plan to go on a business school, you'll likely encounter it there. It's a good read, and I think it provides very good perspective on how you might tailor your career. So with that, we'll open the floor for questions.